Hello and welcome back to another Project Diablo 2 video. I am Kordesh and today we are going to be talking about all things Dark Pact Necromancer. It was my Season 5 character that I started with and I've learned a lot of information and I want to share it with you in this video. So let's get into it. Let's quickly go over some pros and cons for this build. Some of the pros are, this build is cheap as dirt. If you have one high rune, you can pay for this build. It also has some of the best utility in the game, and personally I think that this is the best support character that you can play in a party. It also does magic damage, which circumvents a lot of the immunities that a lot of players face, so that's really nice. One more thing about pros is the magic damage that it does in an AoE is actually exponential. It does so much area of effect damage if there's enough monsters on top of each other. Let's go over the cons, because the cons do suck. Possessed monsters cannot be cursed, which means your Merc is going to slap it like a little wet doodle until it dies, which really sucks. And there's some other monsters or things like traps and lightning spires that you can't curse. So lightning spires in the Arcane Sanctuary. There's the Marketplace Act 3 map that has fire trap things. You can't curse those. Cold Worm, the Burrower, and the map boss in the Torzan Jungle. You can't curse that boss, so that is basically unkillable for you. Also, with your exponential AoE damage, conversely, your single target is atrocious. It is very bad. This build sucks down mana so fast. You're going to be chugging mana potions or you need an insight. You also have to hit the highest faster cast rate breakpoint of 125 because if not, it's too clunky to get your damage off. It's 4 to 5 casts, and if those casts are slow, it really is painful. The final thing is you need a Dark Force spawn. I think it's mandatory for the build because it increases your damage and your utility by a ton. So that's the pros and cons. Now let's get into the real meat of the build. All right, let's talk about the Dark Pact skill. Now this thing is very complicated and kind of dense, so this is going to be kind of crunchy. So just bear with me. First up, let's go ahead and read through it because there are some important points. So it says consumes the curses. However, with Season 5, it only consumes one curse. It does the damage for all the curses, but it consumes one. So moving on, it says consumes the curses on enemies within an area. Now that area is very important. Sealing a Dark Pact and dealing damage around the enemy for each curse devoured. So the area and around the enemy are both very important for the exponential scaling, and I will touch on that later. So as far as the mechanics and the skills, you put your curses on the target. You're kind of storing magic damage into that target, and you're getting a multiplier per curse. So 10% per curse, up to 40% with Dark Force spawn. You detonate it with Dark Pact, and boom, it does that damage in an area of effect. All right, so now it's time to talk about some math and the optimal rotations and the exponential scaling and all that fun stuff. So with my character, you saw that I did about 3,500 magic damage per curse. So as I cast my first curse, it's going to store 3,500 magic damage on that monster, and it's going to do a 10% damage multiplier. So let's say I cast Decrepify, boom, 3,500 damage into that target. It has not happened yet, it's just stored. Next one, let's do a life tap, and now we have 7,000 with a 20% multiplier. Third one, let's say it's amp damage. We have 10,500 with a 30% multiplier, and with Dark Force spawn, we have 14,000 damage into it with a 40% multiplier. Now, on the 5th cast, finally we are casting Dark Pact, and this does two things. The first is the damage stored on the targets decreases because one of the curses gets removed, and it's always the last one applied. So that damage stored decreases, and we only have 3 curses on the targets now. Now that damage dealt hits for 19,600 in an area of effect. So this is kind of the first part of the rotation, is you apply 4 curses, boom, 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 and then as soon as that's done, you detonate. Now, you still have 3 curses on the target, and so then you're kind of in the end phase of your rotation where you reapply the 4th curse, which is this 6th cast, and then you detonate it. And then you reapply it, and you detonate it. And that's kind of how that goes. Now, if you can see here, we have damage per cast, and when you're first applying your stuff, it takes a little while to get going, so the damage per cast is kind of low because this 19,600 is divided by 5. But once you get to that later phase, you can kind of really crank out some damage. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about the exponential damage scaling. So assume that the Dark Pact damage is 19,600, which is what I blow it up for. And if we put all these curses on one hell bovine and then detonate it, we're going to do exactly that much damage. So 19,600. But if we add a second cow, when we apply all those curses and detonate, that damage, from the first one being dark pacted hits both targets. And then the second one being dark pacted hits both targets. So it's actually hitting now 4 times on both of them. And so we're going to go ahead and drag this formula over. And now we're doing 78,400. A crazy amount of damage. I would like to note that this Dark Pact area of effect on the damage is pretty big, but the actual Dark Pact detonation seems pretty small. So I stopped at 5 because that's where I think it kind of stops. But basically, once you get to a point with a bunch of monsters, you just blow them up. So anyway, so when we have 2 monsters, we're doing a ton of damage. Next up, we go to 3 monsters. Yeah, it's just getting ludicrous, and as it scales, you're just doing tons and tons of damage. So with this build on the Blood Moon cow map, I've maintained like 125,000 DPS, and it's just bananas. So it's really, really good. Like I said, the Dark Pact detonation, the amount of monsters that you can hit with that seems to be kind of small and pretty tight, but the area damage that it does from that is pretty big. So there is that exponential damage scaling, but it kind of gets capped on the range. So really, really interesting stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Iron Maiden synergy versus no Iron Maiden synergy. And as you can see, we have a 1,200% increase in damage versus 1,080% increase in damage. So my character with a level 46 Dark Pact has a minimum magic damage of 263. Now, when you take this and multiply it by the increases to synergies, we end up with 3,103 versus 3,419. And you might be wondering, is this accurate? So if we look at my character, I should have 3,103 minimum damage. And let's go ahead and pull it up. And what do we see here? 3,103 minimum damage. So this math is completely accurate and checks out with the in-game. So we're looking at a little bit of a difference, about 300 damage difference. But we do need to note that we're looking at minimum damage here. And it will then be multiplied by 4 because we're going to have 4 curses, and then we're going to get that multiplier of 1.4 or 40%. And so this is the final tally of damage between an Iron Maiden and no Iron Maiden spec. I would like to point out, when your gear is bad and you're starting off, it might be worth speccing into Iron Maiden because your damage is so low that it is very important to be able to kill things. At this point, if I'm doing 19,000 or 17,000 damage, I don't really care. I'm trying to just bring the best curses to the table. So that's how this breakdown works. All right, so let's talk about one more quick thing, and that's early game Dark Pact Iron Maiden versus no Iron Maiden. So at level 26, which I think is very achievable, because you can use a thing like the +6 Dark Pact two-handed weapon that's kind of like a level unique that's probably cost 1 World Stone Shard, or an amulet with plus Necromancer helmets. It's easy to get +6 to skills as a Necromancer, or specifically to Dark Pact. So the minimum damage on Dark Pact at level 26 is 89 magic damage. Now, these values for Iron Maiden or no Iron Maiden synergies is assumed level 80 character. And the magic damage per cast is 1050 with Iron Maiden or 943 without. And then the grand total is about 5,500 versus 4,900. And so this is about a 10% increase or so in damage for getting Iron Maiden. Now, early on, this damage difference might be the difference of one-shotting the pack of monsters or having to cast 2 more spells. And that's kind of a big deal. Whereas later on, this damage difference is really, it's pretty similar as far as damage, but this damage is so high that you're probably going to be one-shotting the pack anyway. So that's why I would recommend taking Iron Maiden synergy early on and then dropping it later. All right, let's talk about gearing. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Dark Force spawn. Now, this is pretty much mandatory for the build because, first off, the +2 to curses is amazing. The FCR is great, but you need the additional curse. 1, you get more utility out of it. 2, you get more damage out of your Dark Pact, and you get more damage per cast, it makes it better and deal more damage, because once you hit those 4 curses, you can just bounce back and forth between 3 and 4 curses, and you're getting a higher flat damage and a higher multiplier. So it's very awesome and powerful and just pretty much required for the build. Next up, I'm going to just kind of point out Skin of the Viper Magi here. Skin of the Viper Magi is fairly cheap, and it's got 30 FCR, and you are desperately trying to hit this 125 breakpoint. You could also use Q-Hagens here, but I think Skin of the Viper Magi is very powerful. Also, you can up it. There are, maybe I can show. So this says this item uses a Co-Elem and a Perfect Diamond, and you can upgrade it, and it will require more strength. So I upgraded this to a Wormhide, and now it has 1042 defense. If we go and look at let's see if I have one on me. There it is. So if I look at another one, this only has 279 defense. So it gained like 700 defense. Highly recommend doing that. Again, Q-Hagens would work. Enigma would be fine. It could also save points for Blood Warp. Really, any +2 FCR is going to work out as long as you can hit that 125. So next up, the Black Hand Key. This thing is great just because it's giving you more plus to skills than pretty much any other option. We're getting 30 FCR from it, which is very valuable. And, the life, the fire res, all good. Grimoire is fine. You can throw it out if you want to. If not, who cares? Do what you want. As far as gloves, the Trangs is definitely best in slot. +2 to curses, 20 FCR. You can't really ask for more here. Arachnid Mesh, +1 to all skills with FCR. Again, fantastic. You want this. As far as your rings, you definitely want skill rings. I only have one right now, but I would definitely run a second one. Right now, this is just a smorgasbord of resistances, and I don't really have a better option, so that's that. As far as boots, you probably want something like Alders or just good boots that have CBF. Ideally slammed on them, but I haven't hit that yet, so I am just running Rite of Passage. I've actually slammed my some Marowaks with CBF, which is useless because it already has that. But yeah, I would recommend using Marowaks, but you do need the strength to wear them. And if you don't have the strength to wear them, the boot itself adds strength, but be careful because then when you join games, it's red, and then you have to kind of glitch your strength, and then it's just awkward. I wouldn't worry about that. So Rite of Passage, Marowaks are both, cannot be frozen natively on the boots. So I'd recommend those, or find any other boots and get CBF slammed on them, or get it on another slot. As far as your amulet, Mars works great. As soon as I get a torch, which, if you can believe this, I have an Annie, but no torch. As soon as I get my torch, I'm dishing the Annie for a +3 curses. And that, I believe, is right here. Yeah, so I don't have a +4, but I will try and make that at some point. I've been slamming every +3 curses I've gotten. But Mars is fine. The resistances are good. And that's pretty much it. As far as the circlet, I would highly recommend trying to get a +2 Necro circlet with 10 FCR. If you can get some resistances, cool. Also, Larzik's puzzle pieces are going very cheap right now, basically for an and so you can get multiple sockets in a rare helmet. So, I think I picked up this helmet for a Mal, or something criminally underpriced, and then I paid an for the Larzik's puzzle piece to socket it, and I put an for all resistances, and then I tossed an Ord in because I had to try and target that specific resist, which was, let's see here, I needed the lightning res. And as you can see, my lightning res is good. We're really overcapped on the resistances. And the reason why I'm so high on that is I've been doing a lot of Ubers, and I really just can't be bothered to get messed up by conviction or low resist. So that's my gear. And then we have a bunch of curse skillers. And then we have an Annie. I would run a torch, but we've done about 25 Ubers and haven't seen a single Necromancer torch. Really unfortunate. And then we just have resistance charms across the board. 5 all res, 6 magic find, that's really nice. But really just anything with resistance is great. All right, next up is the Mercenary. And so right now I have an insight in a Ghost Spear, and this is not optimal. I'm trying to get a better insight, but I find that I really need insight in the mana from it. So I also have an ethereal CV on another character, and so sometimes I swap between the two. But really, you just want an insight and an ethereal, like, I think giant thresher would be good. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of information on that. But yeah, don't go for a ghost spear. This was one that I made very early on in the league. As far as the armor, fortitude is fantastic. So this is a pretty well rolled fortitude, but you can also go for something cheap. Like I was running Mavina's chest piece for a long time, Leviathan. Really anything that's going to let them be tanky enough to not die is fantastic here. I'm still running the Tal's Mask, but any lifesteal is going to be good. Vamp Gaze would be great. But yeah, so Tal's is fine. For me, he doesn't die, so I don't really care. Laying of Hands, you're just looking for 20 IAS, and the increased damage to demons is really, really nice. So I'm pretty much happy just rolling with that. String of Ears, I love the PDR, reduction in the lifesteal. And then normally, I'm still looking for CBF on boots. If I can get a corruption on something else, then I'm not going to worry about it, and I'll use better boots. But, this also has 2% physical damage reduction. So pretty good stuff. And you can see he slaps pretty hard. And once I apply my curses, monsters have negative 70 physical damage resistance. So he hits much harder with 58% lifesteal from my life tap. And that means that my 58% lifesteal plus his 14, or he just, every time he hits, he goes to full health. It's really nice. All right, so I'm going to be going through a skill breakdown, and we have some plus to skills in here. Maybe too many right now, but so let's kind of talk about where we put our points. So the first thing I want to talk about is summoning spells. So we're going to put one in Clay Golem, one in Blood Golem, and one in Blood Warp. Now, I will say this Blood Golem, if you have, if you have Life Tap and Curses Decrepify, that Blood Golem can easily stay alive. I've had this 1 point in Blood Golem stay alive in Ubers, multiple Ubers in a row. So it's kind of impressive. Now, as far as the curses, you start off, you put a point in amp damage, start putting it with a point in curse mastery, and then whenever you can put points in these other curses as you go down the line, and we'll talk about that more later. But what is the first thing that you would max out here? My vote is curse mastery. Early on, Dark Pact needs multiple curses to deal good damage, and honestly, I find that early on it is trash. I would highly recommend going to watch my Clay Golem leveling guide. But if you're in a group, you can just grab curse mastery and start throwing down curses. So what curses do I think are the most important? Well, that depends. Are you soloing? Are you grouping? That is the big question. If you're soloing, I think you should grab, first off, I think you should max out Decrepify. As you put points into it, it will reduce the movement speed and the attack and cast rate. The attack and cast rate caps at 60%, but the movement speed keeps going up 1 point at a time, which is kind of nice just to slow that velocity down and give you more time to get your casts off. On top of that, as soon as you put 1 point in Decrepify, you're getting negative 10 physical damage resistance. So this is very good for soloing. The Iron Maiden is pretty great just for damage. So if you want to do more damage with your Dark Pact, if you're lower gear level, I would recommend that. Personally, once you get high gear level, I wouldn't touch this. And then from there, we're going to look at other things. So I really like Life Tap because you need to actually invest hard points into it. And as you can see, every point I'm putting into it is increasing the lifesteal by 2%. And it caps all the way at 58%. That's an incredible amount of lifesteal. Your mercenary won't die. Anybody that has any physical attack, if they have enough life, they will just leech back to full. It's so good. It's crazy good. So I really like Life Tap. And then next up, what else is really good? So I like Amplify Damage and Lower Resist. Now, both Amplify Damage and Lower Resist function similarly, where as you put points into it, it increases by 1%. However, both of these skills have a hard cap. So as you see, I'm putting more points into it, and right now it's at 54. If I get an additional +5 to skills, it goes to 59. And then if I put another point into it, it goes to 60, and then it hard caps. So, I've only got, this is only level 40, but with my Curse Mastery, it's hard capped at negative 60 physical damage resistance. You do not need to put more points into it. It only increases the duration, and on Amplified Damage, the duration is kind of trash. It's only, you're going up by 0.2 seconds. Lower Resist functions very similarly, capping out at negative 65%. So now that I'm there, we don't have to do anything else. It's going to increase the mana cost and the duration, and we don't care about that at all. So now that we've got all that stuff done, what do we do now? So there's a couple options. If you are soloing, I would pick up amp damage. If you're not, you could put more points into weaken. I think weaken is pretty good. It also doesn't require much investment because you're going to hit that negative 60 defense just with gear generally. But also you can invest a couple more points. But the points only decrease the target's damage by 1%. And that only works for physical attacks. As far as these other curses, dim vision is, negative attack rating. And it also messes with their AI, so it's pretty good. But personally, I kind of like the weaken better. I played around with both. But the negative attack rating is kind of nice. But I'd rather just take less damage than have them miss or, stuff like that. There's also some CC options with Terror and Confuse and Attract. But I find these to be kind of clunky and they don't last super long. I mean, 3-second duration. Confuse lasts a pretty long time and it's pretty good solo. So if you're working solo, I would go like Decrep, Confuse, Iron Maiden, something like that. Maybe Life Tap after that. But I did want to show one more thing. So we have some points left over. You can pump them into whatever curses you want. The curses are a toolbox. You pick what is best for you and your situation. Just make sure you know about the caps on low res and amplify damage and how the effectiveness of Decrep and Weaken scale. Other than that, there is something kind of interesting you can do. So you can come over to the summoning spells and you can put 10 points into Golem Mastery. And so now we have 3 Blood Golems. Now, these Blood Golems, if you're using, Life Tap with that 58% lifesteal, and let's say Decrepify and Amplify Damage and Iron Maiden, now they are hitting pretty hard because the enemies have negative 70 PDR. They have 58% lifesteal, and whenever they're getting smacked, let's see here. Whenever they're getting smacked, they're returning a ton of damage back. So that's kind of a fun solo build. On top of that, if we look at the Blood Golem, whenever the Blood Golems attack targets, it heals you, so it makes you safer. So I definitely recommend this as like a solo safe build. But so this is definitely a lot of different ways to build it, and I'll show how my characters evolved at the very end of the video. But yeah, this is skills. The skills are complicated. They're whatever you want to do with them. This customizable. Make this your own to accomplish what you want to do. There is one thing that I wanted to note. Decrepify is incredible, but it does not work on most map bosses, the Uber Ancients or Uber Tristram or Declone or any of the bosses. It's not really going to work on. Even I think Diablo and Bale. So be careful with that. Don't waste your cast. You're going to have to switch if this is, your first cast and then you put 3 other ones up, you're going to have to switch and do amp damage, weaken, life tap, and lower resist or something. So just be aware of that. Don't try and apply Decrepify to bosses. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about mapping. So with this character, I find that solo mapping really sucks generally, unless it is the Blood Moon map. Now, the reason for that is the Blood Moon map plays exactly to Dark Pact strengths, which is slow-moving monsters, which are the cows that you can easily hit with all of your curses and then detonate with Dark Pact. Now, other maps that have spread out monsters or ranged monsters that kind of, surround you in semicircles, it's much more problematic. So I'm probably going to have more difficulty with this blue tier 3 map than this, very juiced up 300 density Blood Moon map. And I'm going to go ahead and show you this Secheron Canyon real quick. So I'm going to come inside. I'm going to go ahead and put this on its throw. And I apologize if my mechanical keyboard's annoying, but here we go. So I'm running around. These little fetishes are going to come up on me pretty quickly. And I'm going to do my best to try and kill them. Now, the big thing with Dark Pact here is I'm hoping to get Dark Force spawn revives to kind of tank for me. And so, as you can see, it's not super fast. These ranged Dark Knights do hit me a little bit. And, I'm just going to do my best to try and kill some of these monsters. But, I mean, we're looking pretty slow, pretty underwhelming. I'm already at half health. And it's just these ranged monsters are not ideal. We have Conviction with some other stuff. I'm going to have to cast my stuff and back up. And, okay, we got through that. I've already used 1 full rejuve. And Decrepify makes it very easy and safe. But, again, these little fetishes are running up on me. And these Oblivion Knights, again, can cast from far away. Luckily, it looks like I have 2 revives currently. And it's going okay. This can't be impressive. Like, you know, like me casting 5 times to not even kill this Serpent Magus, like, that's not good. So, I mean, that's a nice little pop, but again, it's pretty slow. And so right now we're getting a little dicey territory, and yeah, these fetishes are running up on me. I don't have enough stuff to really protect me. There are builds where you can go kind of golems and Dark Pact, but I'm of the mindset of don't half-ass 2 things. I'd rather whole-ass 1 thing, and I'd rather be really powerful with cursing. So I'm going to go ahead and change these 2 hotkeys up so I can apply weaken instead of lower resist, because I was running with some people that benefit from lower res. I lost my blood golem, and yeah, this is not impressive. All right, forget this map. We're just gonna jump into another game, and I'm gonna show you how awesome the Blood Moon map is. And I want you to realize that, like, this character kind of sucks for solo mapping. All right, so now we have this Blood Moon map, and you know they got velocity, whatever, but 300% monster density, and we're gonna go ahead and activate the DPS meter. And now this build is going to look incredible. It's going to look amazing. So we're going to start off and we're, you know, just popping some cows. The AoE is huge. There's just tons and tons of monsters. Once we get everything cursed, we can start popping them. And I mean, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of DPS so far. Pretty good stuff. So I'm going to reposition with Blood Warp. And yeah, it's really all about the density because, again, the amount of damage you can deal to 1 monster is the same you can deal to a bunch of monsters. And another thing that's great about this is the more monsters we kill, the more revives, well, not revives, but the more things, reanimate Oblivion Knights we get with Dark Force spawn. And once we have a bunch of those kind of tank for us, and it's really, really nice and chill. I'm going to go ahead and put my headset on real quick. And so yeah, we're off to the races. Go ahead and pick up that map. And this feels just much, much better than the other map that I was doing. And maybe I should have rolled that map to get a little bit more density, but it's, I don't know, the cow map just feels so much better. And I've tried so many maps, and I don't play this character solo anymore. I find that it's not as fun for me. I'd rather play other builds solo and just rock this in a group because it's so good in group content. So I'm going to make my way over to the boss just to kind of show you again what single target's like, especially solo. And then after I get to the boss, I'm going to show you Ubers and how much we were annihilating Ubers. Me and my friends. Just gonna go ahead and pick that up and put it back down. Make sure it's rocking. Yep, we're just making our way, killing some cows. It doesn't look like it's applying my Decrepify. Sometimes I feel like if it doesn't look like it's applying all 4 curses, I like to pick up and re-equip my Dark Force spawn. I don't know if it actually helps or if it's a visual bug or what's going on, but it feels like sometimes it does something. I don't know. So that's where we're at, and I'm going to try and just group up these cows, get decrep on all of them, and then just big old pops. Got a couple of jewels back there. And this feels like I'm playing like a real build. Let's go ahead and pick that up. have a couple jewels to get through and identify. But yeah, so we have quite the number of Oblivion Knights, which feels pretty good. But I think this build is unplayable solo unless you're doing this map. So, alright, so now you see that we have a ghostly. There might be a possessed in here, or maybe not. Okay, it doesn't look like it. But if there was a possessed one, I would not be able to curse it, which means my Merc would have to kill it, which it can. It's kind of slow. So I'm just going to go ahead and teleport in here and curse and hope to not get killed before I can get the Dark Pact off. Oh. And yeah, so we're just making our way downtown. And as you can see, the AoE is pretty insane. And I mean, we're almost maintaining 100,000 DPS on this map. And then I want to show you what happens when we get to the boss. So if we clear everything else... Oh, ran out of mana, so... Go ahead and loot a mana potion. Grab a couple of these. Grab a couple more. And so I think the boss should be about right here. Alright, so the boss should be right here. If I am not mistaken. Yeah, here's the boss. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and try and kill everything else that's not the boss. And once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and reset the DPS meter. So now this is kind of like single target. So we were maintaining about 100,000 DPS. And I'm trying to do the optimal boss rotation. So as you can see, the Crepify does not work on the boss. And we're doing about about 10,000 DPS single target. And it's a little bit inflated because, you know, my mercenary hits really hard, and so his single target is good. But my single target is real bad. So this thing dies. It took some time. And we get rewarded with a Maelstrom. So yeah, really impressive stuff on this map only. Don't be fooled. Unless there's a ton of density, this build is not very good solo. Now, what this build is good at is group play. Alright, so you might be wondering what Ubers is like on a Dark Pact Necromancer. And really, if you're trying to solo this, you can, but it's gonna suck. So just don't. Just get some friends. So as you can see, I'm kind of line of sighting, and I'm applying Life Tap first, and then lower resist, weaken, and amplify damage. For some reason, amplify damage doesn't show on there, but I'm pretty sure it's still applying because my two physical damage dealing companions beat the hell out of Mephisto, and he goes down very quickly. And we have a throw barb and then a Zeal Paladin. I don't know, some kind of boss killing Paladin. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and try and fight Diablo and Bale at the same time. I try and drop my cube, but unfortunately I have a bunch of inventory slots that are open, so it puts it mostly in my inventory, which I realized there. So yeah, it's a little bit hairy. You know, the throw barb is a little bit sketched out, but we have Life Tap, we have Amplify Damage, 58% Lifesteal, and so we are just shredding. So Diablo goes down, easy peasy. Black Soulstone drops, which is very nice. On top of that, we go over, start fighting Bale. And yeah, so Bale's already at half health as we start, and we kind of just hang out, and I'm casting, dropping some rejuves on the ground for fun, so I can pick up my cube. And yeah, pretty clean. Now the big thing is, I am kind of a force multiplier, so I increase the damage of my party members. So if you're doing this with people that cannot do this, you're not going to be able to help them. But if you have some friends that have really good, auto attack damage or they're physical damage dealers, that's going to be great. I'm going to go ahead and show another Ubers just because, yeah, it makes it very easy with the support of your curses on other party members. So we go in as a group, we're looking for one of them solo, we get Mephisto, and I'm really just casting off screen. The first thing I'm always trying to apply is life tap because that 58% lifesteal really helps my allies. So I make sure that's up. Then my next one that I'm applying is amplify damage. After that, I apply weaken, and then finally I apply lower resist. I do not try and apply Decrepify because Decrepify does not work on these bosses. It would be fantastic, but it would be broken, so that's why it doesn't work. So, it looks kind of boring because I'm just kind of off screen. I also like to know that my resistances are capped and they cannot be broken by conviction or lower resist. And so now over here we have Diablo and I think Bale. I think they're fighting both at the same time. I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, but I'm just making sure that I'm cursing, making sure that we have uptime on all my curses. My mercenary gets kind of low, so I go ahead and toss a potion into him. And Diablo goes down, and then we go over, fight some Bale. And again, both my allies here, they have pretty damn good gear. The Paladin has some ridiculous gear, and then the Throwbarb has just some pretty awesome stuff. So we make quick work of these. Again, the amplified damage really is a force multiplier on them kicking ass. So boom, another Uber's done, and we did 7 of these tonight, and we're doing them in about 2 to 3 minutes. Took very little time. So absolutely incredible for bossing as long as you have the right group and the right friends. If you are enjoying my content, I'd really appreciate if you would hit that subscribe button, mainly so I don't have to spam Reddit or Discord or anywhere else, and you could just get my videos whenever I post them. Alright, so that's it for Dark Pact. The future of the build for me is I'm actually going to be getting rid of Dark Pact and just going full in on all of the support curses because I find that I don't really want to detonate any of them. And I also want to be able to max out lower resist to the -65, which I don't currently have. And I think that would just be more fun for me in group play, and I'm planning on doing group maps like that, 8-man parties. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to solo on another character. Now, if you want to see what it's like for me to solo early on, where to farm, what's going on, I did have a day 1 recap of how my league start went, and on there I kind of showcased how I was doing cows. I think I had like +6 or +8 to skills or something, and the cows went by very quickly, and I just grinded cows until I got a windfall, which I found a Zod rune, which was very lucky, and I turned that into an Arachnid Smesh, and yeah, so we did very well with that. But so I'll have a video to that day 1 recap, specifically try and get it at that timestamp, and you can see kind of how it farms with very minimal gear. Anyways, that's it. If you have any questions about Dark Pact, I feel like I wrote a book on it, so feel free, ask questions down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.